You speak of using the mind as though it were optional, as though it were some tool you pick up when convenient and lay down when it demands effort. But understand this: your mind is a gift entrusted to you, a battleground where truth and lies wage war, where convictions are forged, where character is shaped. You cannot afford to drift through life with a vacant gaze, letting the world think for you, letting distractions drown out the call to discipline and clarity. There is a seriousness to life that demands you engage your thoughts with purpose. Do not surrender your reasoning to the noise around you. Train it, challenge it, confront every lazy conclusion, every careless belief, every shallow excuse. The world will offer you shortcuts, entertainment disguised as wisdom, opinions packaged as truth, but you must learn to test everything. A passive mind is a vulnerable mind. You must cultivate a fierce intentionality. When fear rises, think. When temptation whispers, think. When doubt clouds your vision, think. Do not let emotions, however loud they scream, be your master. Let the mind rise above the waves, steady and sober, refusing to be tossed by every passing impulse. And guard your mind. What you feed it will shape you. What you dwell on will define you. Do not fill it with what weakens you and expect strength to follow. Discipline your attention, direct your focus. You were not made for triviality. You were not designed for mediocrity. You were created with the capacity to reason, to discern, to pursue truth with a relentless hunger. So use the mind. Use it with humility, knowing it must be shaped. Use it with courage, knowing it will be tested. Use it with determination, knowing the journey of growth is long and costly. And use it with the unshakable conviction that nothing changes, nothing deep, nothing lasting, until the mind is awakened, sharpened, and set on the path of truth. Your mind is a responsibility, not an accessory, and yet many move through life as though their thoughts were mere background noise, something that happens to them rather than something they are called to shepherd. To treat the mind as a responsibility means understanding that every idea, every belief, every judgment, every conclusion carries weight. It means recognizing that what enters your mind does not simply pass through. It leaves an imprint, shaping your perceptions, influencing your decisions, and ultimately guiding the course of your life. Too many underestimate this. They imagine that thoughts are harmless guests, arriving and departing without consequence. But every thought, welcomed or unexamined, has the potential to steer you toward strength or toward ruin. A neglected mind becomes a place where lies grow comfortable, where confusion settles like dust, where ignorance builds its own silent fortress. To take responsibility for your mind is to acknowledge that it must be tended like fertile soil. Responsibility demands intentionality. It means refusing to drift. It means refusing to let habit or convenience make your decisions for you. Think of how easily the mind can slip into passivity, hours lost to trivial distractions, days shaped by impulses rather than conviction, years guided by the expectations of others rather than the clarity of truth. A mind left on autopilot will always choose the path of least resistance. But responsibility calls you to vigilance. It calls you to ask uncomfortable questions. Why do I think the way I do? What assumptions have I accepted without challenge? What beliefs do I cling to because they feel safe rather than because they are true? This kind of introspection is not easy. It is far simpler to let the noise of life drown out the need for self-examination. But growth has never come to the one who refuses to look inward with honesty. To treat your mind as a responsibility means guarding it fiercely. The world does not hesitate to push its opinions, its values, its narratives upon you. Every day, you are bombarded with messages telling you what to desire, what to fear, what to chase, what to avoid. If you do not guard your mind, it will be shaped by forces that do not care about your integrity or your purpose. It will be molded by trends, manipulated by persuasion, swept away by emotional waves that rise and fall with the shifting moods of society. Guarding your mind does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means being discerning as you engage with it. It means evaluating what you see, what you hear, what you repeat, and what you internalize. Not everything deserves a place in your thoughts. Not every idea is worthy of belief. Not every voice deserves your attention. A responsible mind is a filtered mind, not a closed one. Responsibility also requires discipline. Very rarely do the most important thoughts arrive effortlessly. Clarity is not often a gift. It is earned through struggle, reflection, and persistence. When confusion clouds your understanding, the easy path is to retreat, to avoid thinking deeply, to distract yourself until the discomfort passes. But discipline demands that you stay in the struggle long enough to reach clarity. It demands that you push your mind to wrestle with complexities rather than settling for superficial answers. Many want maturity without the labor of thinking. They want wisdom without the cost of grappling with difficult truths. Yet no one becomes strong by avoiding effort. Just as the body grows through resistance, the mind grows through the tension of wrestling, questioning, analyzing, and refining. Discipline is not glamorous, but it is transformative. Another aspect of responsibility is humility. It is easy to become proud of your own reasoning, to believe that your thoughts are always correct simply because they come from you. But a responsible mind is humble enough to admit its limitations. It recognizes that it can be misled, that it can cling to error, that it needs correction. Humility does not mean doubting every thought. It means being willing to test them. It means acknowledging that growth often comes through challenge, and that correction is not a threat but a gift. A humble mind listens carefully, evaluates honestly, and accepts truth even when it wounds pride. Pride builds walls around the mind. Humility opens doors to understanding. To treat your mind as a responsibility is to cultivate awareness of its tendencies. Every mind has patterns, some healthy, some destructive. Some people lean toward fear, imagining worst case scenarios even when evidence is scarce. Others lean toward denial, ignoring difficult truths because they are uncomfortable. Some cling to pessimism, believing that nothing will ever change. Others are swept away by optimism that has no foundation. Responsibility means recognizing these tendencies and refusing to be controlled by them. It means learning to distinguish between what is real and what is exaggerated, between what is possible and what is imagined, between what is true and what merely feels true. Awareness is the beginning of mastery. Your mind is a responsibility because it influences everything else in your life. What you think determines what you prioritize. What you believe shapes how you behave. What you dwell on becomes the lens through which you see the world. If your mind is filled with fear, you will live timidly. If it is dominated by bitterness, you will live defensively. If it is saturated with lies, you will chase illusions. But if you train your thoughts in truth, strength, courage, and clarity, your actions will follow. Change begins not with behavior, but with the thoughts that precede it. Every transformation, whether for good or for harm, begins in the mind long before it becomes visible in your life. Responsibility also involves choosing what you will not allow to govern your thinking. Emotions, while powerful, are unsteady rulers. They rise without warning, fall without reason, and often distort reality. You cannot prevent emotions from appearing, but you can prevent them from seizing control of your reasoning. A responsible mind acknowledges emotions but does not bow to them. It allows feelings to be felt but refuses to let them be the compass of decision making. Likewise, past wounds can cloud thought, coloring every new experience with old pain. But responsibility means learning to separate past harm from present truth, refusing to let old stories dictate new chapters. It means healing the mind so that it can think clearly again. Another dimension of responsibility is the pursuit of truth. Truth is not always convenient. It is not always comfortable. It does not bend itself to fit your preferences or align itself with your desires. But the responsible mind seeks it anyway. It follows truth wherever it leads, even when it challenges cherished assumptions or demands uncomfortable change. In a world where many build their lives on feelings, trends, and shifting opinions, the pursuit of truth requires courage. It requires standing firm when others buckle, thinking clearly when others panic, and refusing to be swayed by the pressure of popular thought. A responsible mind does not chase whatever is newest, it clings to what is real. Responsibility also means using the mind for the good of others. Your thoughts are not meant to serve only your own growth. They influence the people around you. A disciplined, discerning, humble mind can bring clarity to others who feel lost. It can bring stability to others who feel overwhelmed. It can bring hope to others who feel trapped in confusion. Conversely, a careless mind spreads confusion, instability, and harm. Your mental stewardship affects more than your own life. Every conversation, every decision, every influence you offer is shaped by the quality of your thinking. To take responsibility for your mind is to take responsibility for the impact you have on the world. Finally, treating your mind as a responsibility means committing to lifelong growth. There is no point at which the mind no longer needs sharpening. There is no stage of life where discipline is unnecessary or vigilance can be abandoned. The moment you stop tending to your thoughts is the moment your mind begins to drift. Growth is not achieved through one moment of clarity, but through a pattern of continual refinement. A responsible mind remains teachable, attentive, and active. It continues to seek understanding, continues to challenge its assumptions, continues to guard its influences, continues to rise above complacency. Responsibility is not fulfilled in a single decision. It is lived out through 1,000 small choices every day. Your mind is not an accessory that you wear when convenient and discard when it becomes burdensome. It is the command center of your life, the place where battles are fought, choices are made, beliefs are built, and destinies are shaped. To treat it as anything less is to betray the gift you have been given. Responsibility calls you to rise, to think, to guard, to discipline, to question, to grow, and to live with a mind awakened and engaged. Strength and growth begin with disciplined, purposeful thinking, because nothing in a person's character, habits, or future changes until the mind itself changes. Many desire strength in their lives, strength to overcome obstacles, strength to resist temptation, strength to endure hardship, strength to rise after failure, but they want it without doing the deep internal work that gives birth to real transformation. They try to change their behavior while leaving their thinking untouched. They attempt to acquire discipline while maintaining undisciplined thoughts. They seek growth while clinging to the patterns that keep them stagnant. But true strength is not built from the outside in. It is formed from the inside out, beginning with the way you choose to think, day by day, moment by moment. Disciplined thinking requires intention. It means refusing to let your thoughts wander wherever convenience or impulse leads them. Too many people drift through mental landscapes filled with fear, distraction, negativity, and self-deception, and then wonder why their lives reflect confusion instead of clarity. Purposeful thinking demands that you decide what you will dwell on and what you will reject. Strength is built when you no longer permit destructive thoughts to take root. Growth begins when you refuse to allow your mind to be a playground for doubt or a habitat for excuses. This is not about pretending that challenges do not exist. It is about training your mind to confront those challenges with direction and stability rather than chaos. There is a kind of laziness that plagues the mind, an unwillingness to think deeply, to examine motives, to question assumptions, to consider consequences. People want quick answers, instant solutions, shallow interpretations. But growth requires wrestling with ideas, not running from them. It demands that you push your mind to analyze, to discern, to reflect, to connect patterns, to evaluate what is true and what is false. Strength does not come to the mind that avoids effort. Purposeful thinking is demanding because it calls you to move beyond the surface, to dig into the roots of your beliefs and behaviors, and to confront whatever is found there. Disciplined thinking also demands consistency. A moment of clarity can spark change, but without consistency, it fizzles out like a flame deprived of oxygen. Consistency means training your thoughts every day, even when motivation is absent, even when distractions call for your attention, even when your emotions insist on being louder than reason. You must become the kind of person who thinks with intention when it is inconvenient, not only when it is easy. Strength grows in the mind that refuses to surrender to mental drift. Growth emerges in the mind that practices discipline repeatedly until thinking with purpose becomes a habit rather than an occasional effort. Purposeful thinking means directing your thoughts toward what builds, not what destroys. There are thoughts that strengthen, thoughts of responsibility, clarity, truth, courage, humility, perseverance. There are also thoughts that weaken, thoughts of self, pity, resentment, entitlement, fear, and dishonesty. Many allow weakening thoughts to dominate simply because they arrive with emotional force. But disciplined thinking does not give power to whatever thought feels strongest. It chooses what is right, what is real, what is true. Strength begins with a willingness to challenge your own thinking and to refuse entry to thoughts that sabotage your growth. Growth depends on the courage to face reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Purposeful thinking does not sugarcoat truths or build illusions to make life easier. It does not run from discomfort. It confronts weaknesses, failures, and flaws directly because only when they are acknowledged can they be overcome. Many remain stagnant because they use their minds to protect their pride rather than to pursue maturity. They rationalize instead of repent. They justify instead of learn. They cling to excuses instead of responsibility. Strength grows when your thinking becomes honest, brutally honest, about who you are and who you need to become. Disciplined thinking involves learning to direct your attention. Attention is one of the most valuable resources a person has, and yet many give it away freely to distractions that offer nothing in return. Time is not the only thing wasted by meaningless content. Strength is wasted, focus is weakened, and clarity is dulled. Purposeful thinking means being intentional about what you allow to occupy your mental space. It means choosing thoughts that move you forward rather than those that keep you circling the same unproductive patterns. Growth demands attention that is disciplined rather than scattered. Strength develops when you learn to think independently, not according to the pressure of others, not according to trends, not according to the shifting winds of opinion. Purposeful thinking means evaluating information critically, not accepting it simply because others do. Many people outsource their thinking to the world around them and then wonder why they feel lost. Strength comes from thinking with conviction, guided by truth, not by convenience. Growth comes from refusing to be mentally swayed by every voice except the one rooted in clarity. Disciplined thinking also requires patience. Growth is not instantaneous. Strength is not built overnight. You cannot expect profound change when you abandon disciplined thinking the moment it becomes difficult. Purposeful thinking understands that mental transformation is slow, deliberate, and often uncomfortable. It means staying committed to the process even when results are not immediately visible. The person who masters their mind does not look for shortcuts. They accept the cost of consistency because they know the reward is worth it. Strength grows in the mind that refuses to be ruled by emotion. Emotions are real and powerful, but they are not always accurate, and they are terrible leaders. Many lives are destroyed because people trust their feelings more than their thinking. Purposeful thought does not silence emotion, but it places it in proper perspective. It acknowledges emotion without allowing it to dictate decisions. Disciplined thinking can say, "I feel this strongly, but I will choose what is right rather than what is easy or comfortable." Strength is built when emotion becomes a messenger, not a master. Growth begins when thinking becomes purposeful enough to break cycles. Cycles of fear, cycles of anger, cycles of insecurity, cycles of immaturity. These do not break themselves. Without disciplined thinking, people repeat the same behaviors year after year, blaming circumstances, blaming others, even blaming fate, while refusing to acknowledge that the cycle continues because their thinking remains unchanged. Growth emerges when you interrupt the cycle with deliberate thought, when you choose to see patterns clearly, and when you take responsibility for breaking them. Purposeful thinking trains you to recognize opportunity. The undisciplined mind misses opportunities because it is preoccupied with distraction, negativity, or impulsive emotion. But the disciplined mind sees possibilities where others see obstacles. It recognizes the lessons in hardship, the growth in discomfort, the strength in struggle. Purposeful thinking transforms challenges into catalysts for growth, rather than excuses for surrender. Strength and growth also depend on thinking that is forward focused. Some people remain trapped in their past failures, past wounds, past mistakes, because they allow their minds to replay old stories endlessly. The disciplined mind acknowledges the past, but refuses to let it define the future. Purposeful thinking asks, "What must I become?" rather than "What was done to me?" It moves forward with intention, refusing to anchor itself to old pain. Growth comes to the mind that practices gratitude and perspective. Disciplined thinking recognizes what is good instead of obsessing over what is missing. It sees challenges within context instead of allowing them to become overwhelming. Purposeful thinking stabilizes the heart by reminding it of what is true, what is valuable, and what is possible. Strength grows when perspective is clear. Purposeful thinking also means seeking wisdom, not merely information, not merely opinions, but wisdom that has been tested by time and strengthened through experience. Many people fill their minds with noise but starve their minds of wisdom. Strength grows when you intentionally feed your mind what enriches it. Growth begins when you choose quality over quantity, depth over superficiality, truth over novelty. Disciplined thinking trains you to be proactive instead of reactive. The reactive mind waits for life to happen. The proactive mind prepares for it. The reactive mind is controlled by circumstances. The proactive mind is guided by conviction. Strength grows in the mind that refuses to be tossed around by external forces and instead chooses to act with intentional purpose. Ultimately, strength and growth depend on a mind that is trained to think with purpose, to think with clarity, to think with discipline. This kind of mind does not happen by accident. It is shaped through daily choices, persistent effort, and a deep commitment to becoming someone who rises above impulse, above distraction, above fear. When your thinking becomes disciplined and purposeful, your choices become stronger, your habits become healthier, your character becomes deeper, and your life becomes more stable. Strength is not something you stumble into. It is something you think your way into. Growth is not something that arrives unexpectedly. It is something you cultivate deliberately through the daily labor of disciplined thought.